Number 10, Earth 5 Shazam. Earth 5, or Earth S, is a simpler, kinder world, a world that is more optimistic, a world where the heroes are seen as such with hardly any faults. Basically, this is the golden age of comics, specifically Fawcett Comics. Here, Captain Marvel is the main superhero, which gives the world the name Thunderworld. He and his family, Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, keep the world safe from everything from the Monster Society to aliens. I'm talking like Shazam is essentially taking the place of Superman as the premier superhero of Earth. This version of Shazam worked together alongside Superman and Overman to recruit the Supermen of the universe. They all worked together, led by Captain Marvel, to defeat Ultraman and weaken Mandrake, who was killed by the Green Lanterns. Number 9, Red Sun Batman. The Batman appearing in one of the greatest Superman stories ever, Red Sun, is not some crazy powerful amalgamation of characters. In fact, I'd say he's considerably weaker than a number of alternate Batmen, but he is still Batman. In this dystopian Earth 30, where Superman became a tool of Stalin and his Soviet Union, Batman has become the most wanted man in Russia. As an adult, he became a blight on the Soviets and terrorized them all for revenge on Pyotr Rozlov, the captain of the police who brought the demise of Bruce's parents. He became an idol for those who wanted to oppose Superman and his regime. Eventually, Rozlov turned on Superman and convinced Batman to take down Superman. So, he stole Wonder Woman and bound her with her own lasso and drew Superman into a trap where he then bombarded the hero with simulated red sunlight. He forced the weakened Superman into a cellar to lock him away forever. But alas, Wonder Woman managed to destroy her lasso and remove the generator powering up the lamps, and unwilling to be locked up and lobotomized, Batman detonated a little boom boom that he'd implanted within his own small intestine. But before he passed away, Batman revealed to Superman the truth of Rozlov's treachery and got his revenge in a really roundabout way. Number 8, Flashpoint Cyborg. When Barry Allen Flash goes back in time to try and save his mom, he royally messes with the timeline, pretty much changing the whole DC universe. In this newly created timeline, Cyborg is America's greatest hero in place of Superman, based out of Detroit. He's the guy, but obviously he doesn't inspire the same kind of confidence as the Man of Steel because that would just be preposterous. When the Amazons and the Atlanteans go to war, Cyborg tries to gather a group of Earth's superhumans to help stop the conflict in its tracks, but it has already ravaged half of Europe. Thanks to Thomas Wayne, this timeline's Batman, refusing to join up, nobody else wants to join this group either. But then, superstar Barry Allen shows up and convinces Wayne otherwise, and the three set off to gather together an army of heroes. And they do, and it's awesome. Number 7, Dead Earth. Now, I'm not sure what the general consensus on this comic is, and quite frankly, I don't really care because I think this version of Diana of Themyscira is just absolutely insanely awesome. The comic picks up in an apocalyptic wasteland in what used to be Gotham City. Deep down in the remnants of what used to be the Batcave, Wonder Woman had been kept alive in a containment unit and was awoken by a group of humans who were running from a mutated monster known as a Hydra. After saving the humans and liberating their city, she journeys to Themyscira only to find out that the Hydra are actually her fellow Amazons mutated by atomic radiation after the Amazons had decided to go to war with the rest of humanity who had driven the Earth to its breaking point. The world had bombarded Themyscira with nuclear fire, even though Diana used the absolute limits of her abilities to try and stop that. When Superman, who fought for humanity, turned up to try and explain why he couldn't have helped Wonder Woman, we see just how powerful this Wonder Woman is. Losing complete control of herself, Wonder Woman and Superman fought each other to the point of causing a great fire that plunged the world into the apocalypse. And at the end of that fight, Wonder Woman, who was double fisting some kryptonite, brought Superman to his final rest with a hole straight through his chest. She collapsed from exhaustion and forgot everything. So when she learned of this past, Wonder Woman decided to set things right and protected what was left of humanity from what she once called her sisters. Number 6, All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman is actually a 12-issue series that sets itself apart from the rest of the DC universe by sort of being a standalone story. At the beginning of the tale, Superman saves an exploration mission to the sun that was sabotaged by Lex Luthor. But because of his overexposure to to the yellow sun, he ends up developing new abilities such as the power to harness the bioelectric aura and pushing his normal abilities to unimaginable levels. But it wasn't just his powers that got a boost. His intellect, creativity, imagination, and curiosity also got boosted up to the point that he started getting new skills and trying out new experiments, even some that would allow a successor for himself to be created. That's important because while his abilities and mental acuity had been boosted up and he even became immune to green kryptonite, the overexposure to the sun also meant he was starting to slowly pass away as his cells became overloaded, causing this story to get really damn emotional. Number 5, Martian Manhunter. Look, I think it's incredibly easy to overlook Martian Manhunter's incredible capabilities. Yes, he is more well known for being a telepath and a shapeshifter, but this guy packs a hell of a punch with the Martian abilities of phasing, Martian vision, and density alteration. In DC 1,000,000, we get a version of John Johns, or John Jones, who leads a war against Darkseid and gets him to surrender to the Source Wall, becoming trapped inside of it. The Source Wall, in return, gave John one wish. His wish was to become one with Mars, meaning John became a living planet while maintaining his multiversal telepathy and his genius level intelligence. Now, we don't get to see much of this version of John, but we can guess a lot of things about this version. Firstly, his weakness to fire is probably non-existent, because people gotta make fire on a planet, I guess. We can also probably assume John keeps his other Martians' abilities to a degree, and there's also the possibility that the passage of time has increased those natural abilities considering he's defeated Darkseid. We can also assume that he would now also have the powers that usually come with being a living planet, like weather manipulation and control of the elements, and he can control the sands of Mars to an incredible degree, so there's that too. Number 4, Last Night on Earth, Joker. In Batman Last Night on Earth by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, Batman, or rather a clone of Batman created by Batman's own resurrection machine, goes out into a post-apocalyptic world completely rocked thanks to Lex Luthor. One of the first things that this new Batman finds, funnily enough, is a lantern with the head of the Joker somehow still alive and speaking inside of it. Kind of like in God of War when Kratos gets the head of Mimir that he just carries around on his hip. Batman takes this Joker lantern as a companion, and this talkative Joker keeps the Dark Knight company as he works to find a way to dethrone Omega, who is a villain that rules over the apocalyptic world using Darkseid's Omega effect. This Joker is strangely friendly and compassionate, and he is honestly a great cheerleader for Batman, which I don't think any of us expected to see. What we really didn't expect to see is that this disembodied head is given a robotic body to become Batman's new Robin. What? Number 3, Kingdom Come Shazam. In an alternate possible future, metahumans or superheroes are now hated. Because of this, Billy Batson hasn't become Shazam in years and is now a full-grown man looking a lot like his alter ego minus the cool costume and cape and powers and all that stuff. He was eventually brainwashed by Lex Luthor into believing that metahumans and even Captain Marvel, who lives inside of him, sort of, are all monsters. In time, Bruce Wayne tries to convince Billy otherwise, which eventually forces him to turn to Shazam once more, breaking open the metahuman prison and starting a massive war that puts the world at risk. Now, after a nuclear device was dropped threatening to take out thousands of people, Superman convinced Billy to help, and Shazam outraced Superman to the device using his lightning to destroy it and sacrificing himself to save both humans and metahumans, ending the hatred against superheroes once and for all in this world. Number 2, Bat Prince. Another alternate version of Batman, I know, but he belongs to probably one of my favorite alternate reality stories to come out of DC Comics, Dark Knights of Steel. This story takes place in a world of medieval fantasy where the Wayne family ruled their kingdom until the mother and father of Superman came to Earth. The L family house became rulers of the land after a horrible attack on the Wayne family. Now, as the surviving son of the Waynes, Bruce serves as both a knight and an adopted son to the L family, with his network of Robins and his super brilliant mind. But as the world is at each other's throats, this Bat Prince learns about the actions that led to his birth and the powers he now possesses as a half-Kryptonian Dark Knight. Dark Knights of Steel that came out last year in 2022 just has so many interesting and fresh takes on classic DC characters. It's fresh and fun and flirty, and I got a variant cover of the first issue and it looks so sweet, and maybe one day I'll get to show you guys. Definitely read Dark Knights of Steel. And finally, into number 1, it's Green Lantern Earth 1. This Green Lantern focused story is one that I actually really like. It brushes over a lot of things very easily, but it made me care about the Green Lanterns, and that's something I didn't think was ever gonna happen. Sorry. It almost feels like a dark sci-fi take on Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns. Essentially, in this story, Hal Jordan is on the moon with a crew of workers who mine for metal when he comes across a crashed alien ship containing the Green Lantern ring, a Green Lantern battery, the corpse of Abin Sur, and a robot called a Manhunter. Hal claimed the ring, just taking it off of the alien corpse, and use it to fight the Manhunter that sprung on him. What had happened is that the Manhunter robots were created by the Guardians of the Universe to take out the Green Lanterns as the Lanterns had grown uncontrollable, and they were pretty successful, but also grew out of control, putting the galaxy in peril and leaving the Green Lantern core broken and spread extremely thin. Hal meets up with an equally inexperienced Kilowog, and they go across the universe trying to rally together any Green Lanterns they can. It all feels like, the best way I saw it described was as if Christopher Nolan and Ridley Scott teamed up and made a Green Lantern story. It does feel like that, and it's just such a cool and fresh take. Number 10, Calvin Ellis. Instead of Kal-El landing on a farm in Kansas, a black Kryptonian named Calvin Ellis was sent to Earth to escape his planet's destruction. Nevertheless, he didn't grow up trying to fit into society, as he instead became very ambitious. What do I mean by that? Well, Calvin Ellis worked hard enough to eventually become the President of the United States, giving him a position that allowed him to better protect his world both politically and physically. He still carried his role as Superman and even became a multiversal hero when he teamed up with the other versions of the character during the Infinite Frontier era. Calvin Ellis gained political power as well as his own incredible Kryptonian abilities, not to mention that he reprogrammed the alien intelligence Brainiac to help him in his duties. He's also a talented boxer. So there's that as well. Number 9, Eradicator Lois. For this point, we are going to go back in time to the infamous death of Superman. When Superman fell in the fight between himself and Doomsday, it didn't hit anyone as hard as it hit Lois Lane. In the dark multiverse, however, something curious happened. After some time passed and Lois saw the effects of a Superman-less world, she eventually traveled to the Fortress of Solitude to return Superman's cape. What she didn't expect to happen was for the Kryptonian Eradicator to show up. This defender of Krypton is the reason that Superman does eventually come back, placing Clark in the Kryptonian life matrix that was supposed to revive Superman. In this story though, it takes longer than expected. Assuming that the revival was a failure, the Eradicator instead places the powers of Superman into the body of Lois Lane. Unfortunately, this is the dark multiverse though, and so this newly superpowered Lois Lane throws almost all caution to the wayside and uses her powers recklessly, saving the day, but with no regard for collateral damage or repercussions. She ends wars, feeds the hungry, destroys the military-industrial complex, all that good stuff, but she also wipes out countless lives, including Batman's, Lex Luthor's, and she's even responsible for the fall of Superman again when he finally does return. The whole story is tragic, but it's also really cool. And to maybe check out part 1 to make sure I didn't miss any of your favorite alternate DC Universe superheroes. Number 8, Batman Who Laughs. While the Batman Who Laughs was Bruce Wayne from Earth -22 of the Dark Multiverse, he basically becomes the most powerful alternate version of the Joker and Batman ever. Everything about this Batman remained relatively the same until the day the Joker found out he was going to pass away, and so he decided to take everyone with him. Joker took down a large number of Batman's rogues gallery, including Catwoman. He caused the passing of Commissioner Gordon, and he paralyzed Batman, forcing the Dark Knight to watch as the Joker took the lives of countless innocent people. Once Batman regained his movement though, he lost it and put the Joker to rest. Now, as his one last sick joke, a toxin in the Joker's heart escaped his body, infecting Batman and turning him into the most terrifying Joker-Batman hybrid you have ever seen. With all the intelligence and physical ability of Batman mixed with the insanity and psychosis of the Joker, the Batman Who Laughs is off the chain. He has a book on how to destroy the multiverse, as well as a real-world comic book that lays out the structure of the universe. He has a pack of metal cards that can warp reality, he has a pack of feral Jokerized Robins, and he can corrupt people to his side with his Joker toxin, like Shazam as an example. He wiped out all the heroes of his universe and several others and put together a squad of evil Batmen who he used to become one of the biggest threats in the multiverse, almost bringing the end of everything. He's not better, but he's cool. Number 7. Furnace. Before the Martians became the Martians, they were an incredibly violent and powerful race called the Burning. The Guardians of the Universe experimented on the Burning and put genetic blocks in place to make them afraid of the fire that they used as their most powerful weapon. That's why Martian Manhunter has a fear of fire. Now, after the Justice League was trapped and taken down in Obsidian Age Atlantis, John Jones blamed himself for his friend's passing because his fear of fire completely overtook him. So, he recruits Scorch to help him overcome his fear, and he would use his telepathy to help her deal with her own problems. Now, unfortunately, in doing this, he also broke the genetic blocks, allowing John to become the incredibly dangerous Furnace, with all of his original powers boosted in potential, especially his telepathy, plus an insane level of pyrokinesis. Number 6. Injustice Superman. The Superman of the Injustice universe has pretty much the same history as the baseline Superman. But when the Joker kidnaps the pregnant Lois Lane, it lures Superman into a trap of fear gas. In this fear-induced state, Superman hallucinates that his wife is the villain Doomsday and instantly attacks her, flying Lois and what would have been John Kent into space, taking both their lives and also inadvertently causing a nuclear detonation to destroy his city, Metropolis. After losing his city, his wife, and his baby, Superman goes into a pretty understandable rage, bursting into the interrogation room where Batman is learning the true intentions of the Joker, and he just plunges his super fist straight through that clown's chest. Following these events, Superman takes control of the entire Earth and rules it as a tyrant. He turns on and destroys his friends, is manipulated by Wonder Woman of all people, holds nothing back, and puts the entire Earth under the control of his regime. He is a seriously hardcore version of Superman who has actually been revisited recently in John Kent's comic book story, where he even took the life of Earth 3's Ultraman very easily. It was kinda nuts. Now you may be wondering, how is this guy better than the original? He's not really. It's not the character himself that's better, it's more like the entire story as a whole is just really interesting and compelling, making it awesome to learn more and more about this evil version of Superman. Number 5. Vampire Batman. In the Elseworlds Batman and Dracula trilogy, Batman goes up against vampires who have turned Gotham into their home, and then eventually he goes up against Dracula himself. In the first novel, Red Rain, the hero wipes out the vampires and Dracula, although he is transformed into a vampire himself, which means we get to see Batman take on crime using the powers of a vampire in the very next novel, Bloodstorm. He does his bestest to resist the darker aspects of being a vampire, but that all goes kaput when Batman lashes out and drains the Joker after the Joker de-lifed Catwoman. Now, Batman has Alfred and Gordon stake him, putting Batman into a catatonic state. A state that he was then revived from in the third book, Crimson Mist, when criminals took over Gotham in his absence. But he is almost completely animalistic now thanks to the isolation. A bloodthirsty vampire Batman quickly wipes out most of his enemies in a very brutal form, draining them in the process until he is finally put to rest by Alfred, Commissioner Gordon, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, who all go with him to the grave. Number 4. Strange Visitor Superman. Another Superman. I know, but okay, before we start, technically, this Superman is not canon, but he is truly one of the more powerful versions of the character ever. In the story, Superman outlives everything in the universe, living for literally billions and billions and billions of years. He lives so long and gets so powerful that he gains new abilities like being able to split into thousands of copies that allow the hero to do what he does best throughout the universe at the same time. He outlives all the gods, cosmic entities, mortals, angels, demons, and everything. He watches countless civilizations rise and fall and learns an insane amount of skills like telepathy, which I didn't even know was a skill. He absorbs ridiculous amounts of energy, learns magic and strange sciences through all his copies, and then he reabsorbs them at the end of everything. He can fly faster than the entropic waves of the end of the universe and can manipulate the fabric of reality through sheer strength. Number 3. Nightwing: The New Order. In the year 2028, all-out war between heroes and villains had broke out in the streets of Metropolis. There was countless lost lives and destruction caused by the conflict for days, but after Batman passed away in the conflict, Nightwing activated a device in the war-torn streets of Metropolis that shut off or dampened the superpowers of most of the world, believing it was the best cause of action to save humanity from the dangers of the superpowered population. After this, Dick Grayson began a relationship with Starfire, and together they had a son named Jake. Now, as time went on, Starfire progressively fell out of love with Dick and resented his cause. One day, after Dick had been chosen to lead the new Crusaders division to hunt metahumans, Starfire left Dick without saying a word, forcing him to raise their son alone in Wayne Manor. Now, it turns out, Jake, Nightwing's son, is a metahuman with superpowers, and Nightwing now has to go against everything he previously stood for to save his son from the world that he created. Tell me that's not cool. It's cool. Number 2. Aurora of Themyscira. Comics seem to continuously supply us with things that we never thought we needed. In a moment not likely to ever happen again in the near future, the House of DC and the House of Marvel were friends. They could talk, they could play nice, and to prove that, one of the most beloved moments came in the mid-1990s when these two companies joined forces for a crossover. This took place in the amalgamated world of Earth 9602. On this Earth, it was not Diana Prince who became Wonder Woman. Instead, a meta-mutant child by the name of Aurora was rescued and raised as a princess by the Amazons by Queen Hippolyta, alongside Diana Prince. The two fought alongside each other as they grew up, but when the time came to choose who would be Wonder Woman, Aurora's natural ability to control and harness the forces of weather, plus her Amazonian training, allowed her to secure the victory. She went off to become one hell of a hero when she finally left the island to enter man's world. It's an interesting take on the character, and you should definitely check it out. And finally, in at number 1, Batman of Earth 32. Unexpected is probably how I would describe the Batman from Earth 32. Now, the original Batman of this universe was Bruce Wayne, who also became a Green Lantern, and then flew off into space. When he left the Earth to serve in the Green Lantern Corps, it left the role of Batman open, and who would have guessed that of all the characters, Alexander Luthor would be the one to answer the call? First appearing in Lex Luthor Year of the Villain #1 from November 2019, this Batman was partnered up with Super Martian, which is a cross between a Martian, like Martian Manhunter, and a Kryptonian, like Superman. As you can imagine, they were a powerful combo. They took up a base of operations in what looked like the Batcave, but mixed with the Fortress of Solitude, and were assisted by Fred, their awesome robotic butler. Thanks to having the Martian as his partner, Lex Batman was well acquainted with telepathy, and while it caused him some pretty bad headaches, it was also instrumental in helping deal with the Prime Earth Lex Luthor when he inevitably showed up on this world.
In its 10th Bat Baby. In Batman number 147, published in 1962, we are introduced to Bat Baby, offering a glimpse into the distinctiveness of Batman during the Silver Age of comics. Contrasting the modern portrayal of Batman as a brooding and conflicted loner, this story reveals a peculiar side of the Caped Crusader. The narrative unfolds as Batman and Robin infiltrate a criminal hideout, initially gaining the upper hand. However, the criminals manage to escape when their mad scientist deploys a de-aging ray on Batman, basically think sky-high pacifier, regressing him into a 4-year-old child. Remarkably though, Batman retains his adult intellect and physical strength. Rather than being dismayed by this transformation, Bruce embraces it, donning a miniaturized cape, cowl, and Batman-themed overalls to become Bat Baby. The criminals attempted to ridicule him, but Bat Baby uses his enhanced abilities to foil their plans. So yeah, it is worth noting that de-aging superheroes was a curious trend in this era as well, with characters like Superboy and Wonder Girl being popular variations of Superman and Wonder Woman. However, this takes that to a literal extreme. The concept of a baby Bruce Wayne fighting crime did not have lasting popularity, and Bat-Baby remains a singular appearance in DC Comics, which was in Batman number 147. But I think we can all kind of appreciate that. In at 9, Satan Batman. In this future incarnation, Damian Wayne assumes the role of Batman following the demise of the second Batman. Possessing supernatural abilities and the willingness to take lives, Damian believed that resorting to lethal methods was necessary to combat crime, setting him apart from any other members of the Bat family. Despite the efforts of Father James Gordon and Alfred to guide him towards a different path, Damian remained steadfast in his convictions. A heated argument with his father resulted in Damian severely injuring him with a dangerously close stab wound, leading to his expulsion from the Batcave by Alfred. During his tenure as Batman, Damian faced a formidable adversary in the form of Michael Lane, the former Azrael, driven by an unhinged obsession to destroy Batman under the influence of Simon Hurt. As chaos engulfed the planet, Gotham became a quarantine city overrun by Joker-affected inhabitants, and Talia al Ghul, Damian's mother, ordered the city's annihilation through a nuclear strike authorized by Simon Hurt, who had risen to the highest echelons of the American government. Remarkably, Damian survived the cataclysmic blast due to a pact he had made with Dr. Hurt, so I don't know what Simon was thinking, really, okay? He didn't think that one through. In at 8, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is a combination of Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' death at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. All hail the North! His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, basically the Canadian FBI, and was ambushed and killed by poachers a short time after Logan's arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan was sent to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, after that, the Canadian Super Soldier program, and it was here that Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his meta-mutant nature. And since this is an amalgam, they are both considered metas and mutants, because that's basically the same thing between the universes. The Weapon X project was terminated due to its dual failure. Logan was ineffective because he actually had a conscience, but this didn't stop him from being pretty damn bad. Having all the powers of Logan, as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, and I'm not even kidding, this is in essence a superpowered Batman, which I think we all should know is pretty dope. Although I wonder if he has a Claw credit card. In at 7, Batmite. Batmite was a mischievous imp who appeared as a small childlike man donning an ill-fitting Batman costume with a black lightning bolt symbol. Hailing from another dimension, Batmite possessed nearly limitless magical powers. In his dimension, the resident imps idolized the heroes of Batman's world and would mimic their actions and adventures. Batman happened to be Batmite's favorite hero, obviously, leading to the imp visiting him on multiple occasions, often orchestrating peculiar events just to witness his hero in action. Despite his admiration though, Batmite was more of a bothersome pest than a supervillain, often realizing his actions had upset Batman and then leaving him alone. During his first visit to Earth, Batmite used his magical abilities to enhance Batman and Robin's crime-fighting efforts, albeit causing more trouble than assistance, but Batman eventually requested that Batmite apprehend the criminals himself. After fulfilling Batman's request, the imp complied and departed, vowing to return someday. Batmite did reappear later, this time causing chaos, not only for Batman and Robin, but also for the newly introduced Batwoman. So yeah, I mean, he's an imp, and imps are always shifty, okay? We know that. It's been a thing. And at 6, Super Batman. When Dr. Wayne and Mrs. Wayne discover a baby named Kal-El in a mysterious spacecraft, they choose to raise him as their own child. They give him the name Bruce and instill him with a deep respect for all individuals regardless of social class or race. Mrs. Wayne, with her nurturing love, cultivates his heart, while Thomas Wayne, though emotionally reserved, proves to be a kind and compassionate father. Recognizing Kal-El's incredible abilities, his speed, agility, and unbreakable bones, Dr. Wayne focuses on pushing Bruce's mental limits rather than his physical ones, since, that's not really an issue. He imparts Bruce with the belief that cowards and bullies resort to violence, but Bruce, as someone exceptional, should aspire to be something higher, something better. Following the tragedy of his parents' death, Bruce withdraws from the world, finding solace in his parents' mansion. Consumed by a profound hatred for violence and death, the haunting images of death torment his sanity. However, one fateful day, a group of robbers invade his home. Bruce, unleashing his powers, brutally attacks them, tearing them apart with his heat vision. It is in this moment that Bruce realizes the potential of his abilities and resolves to utilize his powers for a greater purpose and adopts the identity of Batman, a symbol of justice and protection. So basically, it's if Superman was Bruce Wayne, which is dope as hell. It's from Superman Speeding Bullets, in case you were wondering. Check it out, it's actually really cool. Halfway through into number 5, John Paul Valley. John Paul Valley, also known as Azrael, was a vigilante who once operated in Gotham City. During a short period, he temporarily assumed the mantle of Batman after the original Dark Knight was incapacitated by Bane. However, his time as Batman was marred by a descent into insanity, leading to dire consequences. As Batman, John Paul succumbed to the darkness within himself, unleashing a brutal and merciless brand of justice upon minor criminals. He inflicted permanent damage to his adversaries, leaving them crippled and beyond recovery, and one such instance was when he ruthlessly assaulted the Tallyman, mistaking him for the original Batman and retaliating for an attempted assassination. In his tumultuous tenure as Batman, John Paul also thwarted the Trigger Twins during a train heist and confronted Mr. Freeze at the Gotham morgue. These confrontations further showcased his unpredictable and aggressive nature as he struggled to maintain control over his actions. Ultimately, John Paul's time as Batman came to an end as he was forcibly removed from the role, but he returned to his original identity as Azrael. His tenure as Dark Knight serves as a cautionary tale, but also he went insane and started seeing Batmite, but not the real Batmite. It's a whole other thing. It's weird. Man, it's weird. And at 4, Vampire Batman. As Batman investigates a series of gruesome deaths in Gotham City, only to discover that the killer is none other than Dracula, the legendary vampire. Not even a joke, actually a thing. Batman teams up with a rogue vampire named Tanya to stop Dracula and his brood from terrorizing the city, but to do so, Tanya provides Batman with a blood substitute after turning him into a vampire to spare him from the cycle of death and killing that comes with being bitten, because you have to drink blood in order to keep living, so they give him a blood substitute to kind of stop that so he has it inside himself. And in order to destroy Dracula's minions, Batman lures them into the Batcave where Tanya and his followers engage them in combat. Batman detonates multiple explosives in the cave, destroying the Wayne Manor and exposing the cave to sunlight, which ultimately kills all the vampires within it. Batman then confronts Dracula on his own and impales the vampire lord on a tree that has been struck by lightning, because this is supernatural and you need something more than just chopping their heads off. This act, however, comes at the cost of Batman's humanity as Dracula drains the last of his blood. Nevertheless, Batman assured his friend Alfred that he had nothing to fear, because as Batman with new vampiric powers, he will live on forever. But I'm pretty sure that this doesn't go well, and I'm pretty sure he tries to take over the world. Don't quote me on that, but if you want to know for yourself, check out Batman and Dracula Red Reign. Getting close to the end in at number 3, Elliot Ness. Elliot Ness, a dedicated federal agent, was entrusted with the formidable task of dismantling the criminal empire of Al Capone during the era of Prohibition in Chicago. And this is also a real thing. This actually happened. But in this story, he was leading a team comprising of Danny Rasher, Frank Basil, and George Kochen. They became renowned as the Untouchables, earning the moniker bestowed upon them by the press. Despite their unwavering determination, they found themselves constantly constrained by legal limitations in their pursuit of justice. Driven by an unyielding desire to rid the city of crime, though, Ness eventually adopted a clandestine alter ego and transformed into the Batman. Operating under the cover of darkness, his vigilante persona straddled the fine line between law enforcement and vigilantism. This dual role allowed him to operate outside of the confines of the law, using unconventional means to bring down the criminals who eluded traditional justice. But since he was actually a federal agent, he was able to, do things enough so that they couldn't just say, hey, he's a vigilante, this doesn't count. Elliot Ness, the federal agent, turned into a masked crusader, undertook the mantle of Batman to confront the criminal underworld both within and outside the boundaries of the law, embodying a symbol of unwavering justice, but who also hunts Kronos with Dean Winchester on the weekends. But ultimately, in at number 2, Zur-En-Arrh. The enigmatic phrase Zur-En-Arrh began appearing throughout the streets and dark alleys of Gotham City, often accompanying Batman's encounters with criminals like the Joker. As time passed, the phrase continued to manifest, typically as graffiti in the background, until one fateful encounter with the Black Glove, who shattered Batman's mind. Nefarious leader Simon Hurt exploited a deep-seated psychological trauma within Batman, triggering a mental breakdown. In the wake of this devastating event, it was unveiled that Batman had constructed a backup personality dormant within his subconscious for years, awaiting the activation code Zur-En-Arrh. This alternate persona transformed Bruce into a deranged Batman that called himself Zur-En-Arrh, which is a twisted reflection of his former self. Empowered by the persona of Zur-En-Arrh, Batman confronted the Black Glove at Arkham Asylum, where they sought to wager his life in a treacherous gambling game. He also faced off against the Joker, but despite his valiant efforts, he ultimately succumbed to defeat, entombed alive within the asylum's graveyard. That's so messed up. That's insane, dude. God. And finally, in at number 1, Lovecraft Batman. After witnessing the brutal death of his parents during childhood, Bruce Wayne embarked on a relentless quest spanning 2 decades to unravel the mysteries of criminal behavior. However, everything takes a dramatic turn when he, along with his trusted companions, venture to the Antarctic in search of an expedition team led by the eccentric socialite Oswald Cobblepot. What awaits Bruce in this frozen realm, though, is a peculiar sight. Cobblepot wandering alone in the icy wilderness, while one of his crewmen, Grendon, had transformed into a lifeless yet animated corpse, unearthing a creature trapped within the frozen depths. Driven by the sense of duty, Bruce seized the opportunity to bring Grendon and the unearthed creature back to Gotham under his custody. However, as the backdrop of the crime-ridden roaring 20s sets the stage, Bruce becomes entangled in a web of connections that link Gotham's dark past to his own father, his parents' death, and a slain scientist named Kirk Longstrom, who possesses the ability to communicate with bats. Through his investigations, Bruce discovers that he alone possesses the power to thwart the sinister cult of Ghoul, who seek to bring out the demise of Gotham and the world itself. Basically, this is Lovecraft Batman, okay? Think Cthulhu but Batman, and that's what you get.
Number 10, Red Sun Superman. Instead of landing in America, Red Sun Superman landed in the Soviet Union, and that allowed the Soviets to weaponize him instead of allowing Clark Kent to live the normal life he traditionally has. He received severe training that not even the original Superman underwent, as Red Sun Superman was always meant to become a weapon. This allowed him to become quite strong as he paired his severe training with his new communist sense of duty. If the training he underwent wasn't enough to prove his power, though, Superman advanced the Soviet Union to almost worldwide control without resorting to war, and he virtually eliminated poverty and disease. This powerful version of Superman is a much more skilled Superman, as that's what he was raised to be. But it was his ability to eventually realize the fault in his own actions and allow the world to become a utopia that kind of puts him a cut above. I don't want to give much of this story away, but if you haven't read it, man, the ending, it'll just kind of knock your socks off. You should definitely read it. Number 9, Ultraman. Who would have thought that a Superman who is just a giant man baby would be one of the more powerful versions of the character? Anyone who has read the Crime Syndicate or Forever Evil stories would probably know this. Ultraman is the Superman of Earth 3, where strength and power are held above everything else. Because of this, the moral ideals that normally hold back Superman are completely gone for Ultraman. Like all evil Superman, he does not hold back at all. But unlike most other Supermen, Ultraman's relationship with Kryptonite is quite different. Instead of weakening the Kryptonian, Kryptonite gives him a crazy significant boost to his power when he crushes it up and inhales it. It's actually kind of terrifying, to be completely honest. Fortunately though, for the heroes of the world, he is depowered by the sun, which caused him to move the moon to block it out when he and the Crime Syndicate of America invaded the Prime DC continuity. Number 8, Calvin Ellis. Instead of Kal-El landing on a farm in Kansas, a black Kryptonian named Calvin Ellis was sent to Earth to escape his planet's destruction. Nevertheless, he didn't grow up trying to fit into society, as he instead became very ambitious. What do I mean? Well, Calvin Ellis worked hard enough to eventually become the President of the United States, giving him a position that allowed him to better protect his world both politically and physically. He still carried his role of Superman and even became a multiversal hero when he teamed up with the other versions of the character during the Infinite Frontier era. Kind of like Red Sun Superman, Calvin Ellis gained political power as well as his own incredible abilities, not to mention that he reprogrammed the alien intelligence Brainiac to help him in his duties. He's also a talented boxer, so there's that. Number 7, Electric Superman. During the 90s, to make Superman more interesting, I guess, DC decided that instead of his normal powers, they would give him Superman energy-based abilities. It instantly makes me wonder who would win in a fight between classic Supes or this guy. This Superman needed to wear a containment suit that helped him regulate his new powers. He could turn back into Clark Kent at will, but at the cost of losing the ability to actually use these new powers. This version of Superman also didn't have the traditional super strength that we'd expect. Instead, he could use energy fields to lift incredibly heavy objects, which is kind of the same as the regular Superman, but wait, there's also more. He could also split his body into two so that he could perform different tasks, he could teleport, manipulate energy, he had molecular control, and even more. But then, just as a little bit of icing on the cake, he's also immune to kryptonite attacks and red solar energy, which is a big boon for any alternate Superman. Number 6. Val Zod. Val Zod is sort of like the third Superman of Earth 2. He was also saved from Krypton's destruction, and after the passing of Kal-El during an invasion of Darkseid, it seemed that Kal came back stronger and unimpeded by morals, now serving Darkseid under the name Brutal. Turns out though that this was actually just a clone created by Darkseid, and he was eventually defeated by Val Zod. That's probably largely to do with the fact that Val here is a man who values intelligence over strength. He has a wealth of knowledge gained through years of Kryptonian study and is possibly smarter than all humans. Val Zod is stronger because he knows how to use the energy fields that are powered by the yellow sun. In that regard, he was powerful enough to defeat Brutal, who was said to be stronger than the original Superman himself. Number 5. All-Star Superman. All-Star Superman is actually a 12-issue series that sets itself apart from the rest of the DC universe by sort of being a standalone story. At the beginning of the tale, Superman saves an exploration mission to the sun that was sabotaged by Lex Luthor. But because of his overexposure to the yellow sun, he ends up developing new abilities such as the power to harness his bioelectric aura and pushing his normal abilities to unimaginable levels. But it wasn't just his powers that got a boost. His intellect, creativity, imagination, and curiosity also got boosted up to the point that he started getting new skills and trying out new experiments, even some that would allow a successor for himself to be created. That's important because while his abilities and mental acuity had been boosted up and he even became immune to green kryptonite, the overexposure to the sun also meant that he was starting to slowly pass away as his cells became overloaded, causing this story to get really damn emotional. Number 4. Strange Visitor Superman. Okay, before we start, technically this Superman is not canon, but he is truly one of the more powerful versions of the character. In his story, Superman outlives everything in the universe, living for literally billions and billions of years. He lives so long and gets so powerful that he gains new abilities like being able to split himself into thousands of copies that allow the hero to do what he does best throughout the universe. He outlives all the gods, cosmic entities, mortals, angels, demons, and everything. He watches countless civilizations rise and fall and learns an insane amount of skills like telepathy. He absorbs ridiculous amounts of energy, learns magic and strange sciences through all his copies, and then reabsorbs them at the end of everything. He can fly faster than the entropic waves of the end of the universe and can even manipulate the fabric of reality through sheer strength. Number 3. Quantum Superman. Alan Adam is Captain Atom, or the Quantic Superman of Earth 4. He's basically a fusion of Dr. Manhattan and Superman. Sort of. Adam obtained his powers when he was present at an experimental uranium engine that was being tested, which then exploded, turning him into a disembodied mind with no natural division in his perception of time, meaning he perceives the past and the future as a single entity. He has some insane abilities. He has the ability to change his own size, levitate, and telekinetically restructure matter, which he used to construct himself a new physical body after his original body was destroyed. Using quantum superposition, he is able to generate copies of himself. He's able to perceive and manipulate reality on at least an 8th dimensional level, and also possesses quantum sense, making him capable of knowing potentially everything. He is also responsible for merging the minds of both Superman and Ultraman in order to operate the next spot on this list. Number 2. Cosmic Armor Superman. Cosmic Armor Superman is basically a thought robot that eventually became one of the strongest versions of Superman, even though it might be one of the weirdest ones of all time, and depending on your viewpoint, you may not count him as a version of Superman at all. I respect that viewpoint, but he always comes up when people talk about the strongest versions of Superman, so here he is. is. This creature is somewhat strange in the sense that it isn't quite human, but it isn't quite artificial as well. The Thought robot was created so that Superman and the antimatter universe Ultraman together could battle something stronger than they could ever normally face on their own. After the battle was done, the Thought robot eventually merged with the entire universe's consciousness. But let me just list the powers that he has here. His powers include reactive evolution, quantum manipulation, plot manipulation, energy manipulation, reality warping, space and time manipulation, immortality, matter manipulation, fourth wall awareness, and a bunch of powers that we can't even imagine. And number 1, Superman Prime. Superman Prime, or Superman 1 million, debuted during the DC 1 million event. This version of Superman stuck around Earth till the end of the 21st century, but after all of those he grew to love passed away, he handed off the Superman mantle to his successor and then went off into space from the 22nd century all the way to the 700th century. He gained godlike abilities and could even bestow his power on others, which he did when he returned to Earth and his descendants. But this guy also spent 15,000 years inside the sun and was drenched in its yellow radiation to become an even stronger version than he already was. He essentially became a god in his own right due to the fact that his exposure to the sun for thousands of years allowed him to increase his powers exponentially. Superman Prime became faster and stronger than any of his other versions, and his powers were increased to unthinkable levels.
In at 10, Jim Gordon. In the wake of Batman's apparent death against the Joker, plans for a new Batman were discussed. With Powers International laying the groundwork for a Batman-inspired task force, their first candidate chosen to model the program was Jim Gordon, who was initially hesitant to fill Batman's shoes but eventually agreed. Going through intense government training and getting surgical muscle implants, Gordon was given the first model of the new Batman robot armor, which he nicknamed Rookie, and took to the streets as the new Batman. By complete chance, he finds Bruce Wayne and informs him that he has taken up the reins as Batman, and as Gordon hears several different reports about Bruce Wayne being found dead throughout Gotham, he works with Batman to figure out that a Batman from an alternate dark universe, known as the Batman Who Laughs, is the one responsible. Tracking him down, Gordon seeks help from his estranged son, James Jr. However, another dark version of Batman arrives and introduces himself as the Grim Knight. But it's certainly jarring to see Batman go from this big bulky hero to a lanky Jim Gordon. He looks fragile, but I mean still, it's kinda dope that Gordon becomes Batman. In at 9, Flashpoint. Thomas Wayne's Batman from the Flashpoint timeline is a fascinating and tragic character, and honestly, one of my favorite versions of Batman. In this alternate universe, it was Bruce Wayne who was killed in the alleyway, causing his father, Thomas, to become Batman instead. Unlike his son's more traditional superhero version, Thomas Wayne's Batman operates more like a vigilante, using brutal and even lethal tactics to take down his enemies. He's a hardened and embittered figure who has given up hope for justice in a world riddled with corruption and violence. And I mean, given his origin, I kinda get it. I understand why. Despite his brutal methods though, Thomas is driven by a deep sense of love and protection for his wife Martha, who has gone insane and actually become the Joker in this reality after the loss of their son. He'll stop at nothing to try and save her, even if it means crossing moral boundaries. Thomas Wayne's Batman is a dark and tragic twist on the traditional Batman mythology, and he reminds us that the choices we make, even the ones made with the best intentions, can have unforeseen and devastating consequences. But also he killed Reverse Flash, which is pretty dope. In at 8, Red Rain. Batman investigates a series of gruesome murders in Gotham City, only to discover that the killer is none other than Dracula, the legendary vampire. Batman teams up with a rogue vampire named Tanya to stop Dracula and his brood from terrorizing the city, but in the course of it, Batman actually makes Tanya turn him. Yeah, he becomes a vampire to fight the vampires. Tanya then provides Batman with a blood substitute to spare him from the cycle of death and murder that comes with being bitten by a vampire, but in order to destroy Dracula's minions, Batman lures them into the Batcave, where Tanya and her followers engage them in combat. Batman detonates multiple explosives, destroying Wayne Manor and exposing the cave to sunlight, which ultimately kills all the vampires inside it. Batman then confronts Dracula himself and impales the vampire lord on a tree that had been struck by lightning. This act, however, comes at the cost of Batman's humanity, as Dracula drained the last of his blood. Nevertheless, Batman assured Alfred that he has nothing to fear, as the Batman, with his new, literally vampiric powers, will live on forever. The most Batman version on this list, if I'm honest. honest. And at 7, Gotham by Gaslight. Gotham by Gaslight is about 19th century Bruce Wayne recalling the killing of his parents as a child. Consulting with Dr. Sigmund Freud, yes that one, about the dreams he has had about the deaths of his parents and significantly bats, he then returns to Gotham City to become Batman and fight crime. The Gotham press begins to circulate the news of the Batman and soon links his appearance to a series of women found killed throughout the city. The identity of the killer is announced by Commissioner Tolliver to be Jack the Ripper. Eventually, Bruce is accused of the murders and sentenced to be and is imprisoned at Arkham Asylum. But with the help of Alfred, he escapes, dons the Batsuit, and stops Jack the Ripper, who is revealed to be Jacob Packer. Jacob then also confesses to causing the deaths of Thomas and Martha and framing Bruce in revenge for Martha's rejection. The comic was a one-shot from January of 1990, but became a fan favorite and is quite the interesting and dark tale, because Batman fighting Jack the Ripper, that's kinda dope. And at 6, Dark Claw. Logan Wayne is a combination of obviously Bruce Wayne and Logan, being first introduced in Marvel vs. DC number 3. At 5 years old, after witnessing his parents' killing at the hands of an armed robber, Logan Wayne was sent to live with his uncle in Alberta, Canada. His uncle was a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and was ambushed and murdered by poachers a short time after his arrival in Canada. After the death of his uncle, Logan then went to live in a home run by nuns, and as soon as he was old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Logan was submitted to the Weapon X project, the Canadian Super Soldier program, and it was here where Logan had adamantium bonded to his bones and learned of his metamutant nature. The Weapon X project was terminated due to its dual failure. Logan was ineffective as a weapon because he possessed a conscience, but this didn't stop him from being pretty damn badass. Having all the powers of Logan, as well as things like the Clawcopter and Clawmobile, I'm not even kidding, those are actually things, this is essentially a superpowered Batman, and I think that that's something we all wanted. Plus, Dark Claw, that's a great freaking name, dude. That's dope. That's terrifying. Halfway through, in at number 5, Red Sun. Imagine, if you will, Batman being a force for Mother Russia. The Batman of this story was born to a pair of dissidents who were later killed by Stalin's police force. He vowed to seek vengeance against Pyotr Roslov, the captain of the police force. After 20 years, he became the most wanted man in the Soviet Union and continuously challenged the authorities, executing acts of terror against Superman's regime and evading Roslov's police force skillfully. I couldn't help it. Just that name kind of makes you have to go into that accent. The people revered him as a legend, impossible to kill and the ghost of killed dissidents. Roslov convinced Batman to team up with him and eliminate Superman, arguing that with Superman out of the way, Batman's vendetta against Roslov would be easier. Batman agreed and kidnapped Wonder Woman using her lasso to draw Superman into a wasteland where he bombarded him with simulated red sunlight, and Batman intended to lock Superman away in a cellar, but Wonder Woman destroyed her lasso and the generator powering the lamps, which freed Superman. Batman then offed himself by detonating a bomb that was inside of his body to avoid being lobotomized and locked up, because of course that's gonna happen. In 4, Batman the Merciless. When Ares, the Greek god of war, created a helmet that amplified his powers 100-fold, war broke out in an effort to stop him. For 2 years, Batman and Wonder Woman fought side by side to get close enough to attempt to stop the god. It was during this war that Bruce and Diana fell in love with each other. They and their allies made a pledge to kill the god of war in order to end his reign of terror once and for all, and as they finally mounted an attack to kill Ares, the two were able to get the helmet off the god of war. However, Diana was incapacitated, causing Batman to believe that she had died. Driven by grief, Bruce put on the helmet of the god of war to defeat Ares, despite being warned of its corrupting influence by Diana earlier on. Believing he could wield it mercifully while making war fair and just, he succeeded in killing Ares but was turned into a merciless warrior himself who started to see his old code as worthless. Despite learning that Diana had actually survived and was only stunned by Ares, Bruce was too addicted to the power of the helmet to let it go. He in fact chose to kill the woman he loved rather than risk losing the helmet. And then with virtually unlimited power and no sense of morality, Bruce went on to wage war on the entire world. Because, you know, gotta love angry Batman. This is basically just Injustice, Superman, but Batman. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Red Death. Red Death is a villainous amalgamation of Batman and the Flash. Possessing super speed and a bloodlust like no other, his origin on Earth -52 is a dark one. Batman started off fighting crime with Robin, obviously, but Robin's kept kept dying. Robin after Robin, none would survive. So Batman grew increasingly extreme within his methods and basically lost all sense of morality. This led him to then seek out Barry, the Flash, for his Speed Force powers. However, when Barry refused to comply, Batman used weapons from his various enemies to incapacitate Barry. Batman then rigged up a cosmic treadmill to his Batmobile somehow. I don't know how a treadmill is gonna help power a car, but then he attached Barry to the hood and drove them both into the Speed Force, causing a fusion of the two. The resulting entity was an evil Batman with super speed and a lust for death, while Barry's consciousness was trapped inside of Bruce's body. Oh boy. Red Death was later approached by the Batman Who Laughs and convinced to join Barbados's Dark Knights, whose aim was to conquer the multiverse, because of course it is. The logistics of how this came to be are unclear, but it's still freaking terrifying. I don't know how a treadmill makes the Batmobile able to get into the Speed Force, but you know what? 88 miles an hour, Marty. Let's go. Penultimately, in at number 2, Batman Beyond. Amanda Waller, director of Project Cadmus, needed a new Batman to continue to fight for justice, and saw genetic engineering as the solution. She created Project Batman Beyond by using Bruce Wayne's DNA to rewrite a male human's reproductive material, and found a couple in Gotham City with a psychological profile nearly identical to that of Bruce's parents, the McGinnises. Warren McGinnis was secretly injected with a nanotech solution that rewrote his DNA to basically be Bruce's, and then a year later, Terry was born with half of his mother's genetic material and half of Bruce's. To complete Terry's origins to become a crime fighter, Amanda planned to have the same trauma that inspired Bruce to become Batman happen to Terry's parents. Yes, this woman plotted to have a kid's parents assassinated right in front of him. After a night at the theater watching The Grey Ghost Strikes, Amanda had the Phantasm go over to kill Terry's parents. However, Phantasm refused to go along with the plan and allowed the McGinnises to continue on, unaware of what might have happened that night. Terry still became the new Batman, fighting for justice in a futuristic Gotham City, but still, come on, Amanda. I mean, like, I know you're Amanda Waller, but like, still, come on, okay? But also, Batman Beyond is like iconic and everyone loves it. And finally, in at number 1, The Batman Who Laughs. The story of Batman of Earth -22 was not much different from that of any other version of the Caped Crusader. When he was a boy, Bruce watched his parents get killed in an alleyway, vowing vengeance against crime. He trained for years and years to become a hero and then became Batman, fighting supervillains in Gotham. But everything went sideways for this Batman when the Joker started a killing spree across Gotham. The clown had discovered that he was dying from the same chemicals that had actually turned him into what he was and wanted to take everyone with him. He killed all of Batman's enemies, including Penguin, Catwoman, Killer Croc, and the Ventriloquist, and the Joker also killed Commissioner Gordon, who accidentally sprung an acid trap on his notebook and melted his face off. After bombing a hospital and recreating the scene from Bruce's parents' death right in front of him multiple times, this Batman lost control and broke Joker's neck. Unbeknownst to Batman though, the Joker exhaled a toxin that contaminated Bruce's heart, which infected anyone close to him if he had died. In this case, it was Batman, so this caused him to snap and basically become the new Joker before taking over Earth -22 and later on gaining cosmic power. So yeah, I'm gonna put that at number 1. That's terrifying but also dope.
Number 10, Deceased. After the Justice League defeated Darkseid, he somehow managed to discreetly abduct Cyborg and take him to his homeworld of Apokolips. There, it was revealed that a half of the anti-life equation was contained inside Cyborg. Darkseid sought to merge the half of the equation inside Cyborg with the half he already possessed, but Desaad warned that combining the two halves inside Cyborg would likely kill him. But Darkseid don't care, so he tried to do it anyways, which resulted in a corrupted anti-life equation that became a techno-organic virus and infected Darkseid. Darkseid, upset, shot this infected Cyborg back to Earth, where he automatically connected to the World Wide Web, instantly infecting every single person who was using it with the virus, and chaos immediately erupted. While he kind of unintentionally put a zombie-like plague on the world, he did try to save it in the end. Keyword try. Number 9. Aquaborg. In Superman Batman issues 60 and 61, we're introduced to the Justice Titans, and in case it wasn't obvious, this is indeed a mashed together version of both the Justice League and the Teen Titans, which in my mind makes things kind of complicated since Cyborg is a main part of both after Flashpoint. Aquaborg himself seems to be a mix of Aquaman and Cyborg, as his name is Arthur Stone. We don't really see him do anything specifically worth mentioning other than fighting Batman and an amalgamated Doomsday and Deathstroke called Doomstroke. Number 8. Earth 3839. In this alternate universe appearing in Superman and Batman Generations 2, number 4, Cyborg, well, he's a bit of a chump. During a confrontation with Metallo, this Earth's Alexander Luthor, Cyborg gets completely immobilized by an EMP and had to be carried to safety by the other heroes, who included Jay West the Flash, Clark Wayne, a superpowered Nightwing, Janet Hall as Black Hawk, and Hal Jordan Green Lantern. Unfortunately, there isn't really much more to say about this one. He was kind of poo, but at least the story was cool. Number 7. dceu Cyborg. Played excellently by Ray Fisher, the movie version of Cyborg seen in Justice League initially refused to join the team, though after his father was captured, he voluntarily pitches in and he successfully saves his father from the hands of Steppenwolf. When Superman returned, his offensive system kicked in and he attacked Superman, which triggered the Man of Steel to fight the Justice League, which was a really cool moment. Cyborg also played a super important role in the final act, where he began to separate the mother boxes that had formed the Unity. And of course, with the help of Superman, he succeeded, since no one in this universe can do anything without Henry Cavill, apparently. Thankfully, Cyborg has a substantially larger role in Zack Snyder's massive Justice League director's cut, which delves deeper into his backstory and his strained relationship with his father. I kind of hope we get to see Ray Fisher reprise the role at some point. Number 6. Flashpoint Cyborg. When Barry Allen Flash goes back in time to try and save his mom, he royally messes up the timeline, pretty much changing the whole DC universe. In this newly created timeline called Flashpoint, Cyborg is America's greatest hero in place of Superman, based out of Detroit. When the Amazons and the Atlanteans go to war with each other, Cyborg tries to gather a group of Earth's superhumans to help stop the conflict that has already ravaged half of Europe. But thanks to Thomas Wayne, this timeline's Batman, refusing to join up, nobody else wanted to join his group either. But then superstar Barry Allen shows up and convinces Wayne otherwise, and the three set off to gather together an army and save the day. Number 5. Robot Man. This version of our favorite cybernetic hero comes from the Kingdom Come universe. In this storyline, Victor Stone actually becomes fully integrated with his robotics, losing his physical humanity in the process. But thanks to this being the future, technology is a little bit more advanced and he becomes made up of a liquid metal, all Terminator T-1000 style. Since he can shape his form in any way he wants, he chooses to look as human as possible, at least in shape. He's still all super shiny liquid metal, so it doesn't really work out fully, but... Victor then joined the Superman's Justice League to combat the rogue metahumans, taking the name Robot Man. Unfortunately though, he met his end in the Gulag with a large group of other heroes. Number 4. Cyborg 2.0. Okay, so this one involves time travel, which I hate, but alas, here we are. So basically, the Teen Titans end up traveling to the 31st century to help out the Legion of Superheroes, and on their way back, they end up 10 years in their future, and they encounter an alternate timeline version of themselves who have become a fascist crime-fighting force. The Titans came back and vowed to never become that future, so they split up to avoid it. Only, that is the exact thing that caused this future to occur in the first place. Victor was one of the first to turn to the dark side, and he created the Titans East, and also caused the Phantom Limbs to appear. He also had this really cool slimmed down look. It was kind of awesome, but he was evil, so you can't really take a side, sorry. Number 3. Injustice Cyborg. In this timeline, just like most of the other heroes, Cyborg had a very similar life to his main Earth counterpart. That is, up until Superman went bonkers. Once Superman established his regime, Cyborg kind of became Superman's Boy Scout. He was very dedicated to Superman, which is not what I would have expected, honestly. He was Superman's guy in the chair and helped him out quite a bit. Honestly, Cyborg was kind of really lame in this story. He gets defeated and incapacitated a lot. The best one though was when Batman revealed there had been a virus that he implanted in Cyborg when they first met and just had it in his back pocket for whenever he would need it. Number 2. Murder Machine. Yes, there is a Batman Cyborg hybrid who is part of the Batman Who Laughs Dark Knights, and yes, he is terrifyingly awesome. Murder Machine first appears in Dark Days the Casting in the Dark Multiverse Earth -44. On this world, this evil Batman Cyborg comes about after the passing of Alfred Pennyworth in the Batcave by a group of Batman's villains. As Bruce Wayne's father figure and closest friend, Bruce took this loss hard and he blamed himself. He asked Cyborg to make an Alfred Cyborg AI called Alfred Protocol in order to help Bruce like Alfred used to do when he was alive. Unfortunately, like most AI in fiction, it went mad with its directive of protecting Batman. It spread like a virus, took down all the villains, then all the heroes, and even took over Batman's body since it didn't believe that Batman could protect himself well enough. And Batman just didn't want to be separated from Alfred, so he was kinda cool with it too. And in at number 1 is Grid. As with a lot of these alternate Justice League variants, we gotta turn to Earth 3 for at least one. After the Cyborg of Earth 3 gained his abilities, he realized that he could monitor all superhuman beings, but he didn't want to invade their privacy directly. So instead, he let secondary subsystems within his software do the privacy invading itself. He called this the Grid. Unfortunately though, this grid managed to grow and learn from hackers and viruses throughout the world, so that it grew into a neural network that then developed into full consciousness with some help from Atomica, who used it against the Justice League and brought it with her to the Crime Syndicate of America. Grid now used Cyborg's parts and body to give itself its own body. Essentially, it took over the body of Cyborg, gaining all of his powers but with none of his humanity. It's very, very, very scary. Number 10. Mazaz. On Earth 3, things are kind of backwards. Power and strength reign supreme, and those who are superheroes and villains in the Prime Universe are supervillains and heroes respectively in Earth 3. Alexander Luthor, for example, was the most powerful superhero on Earth, going by the name Mazaz, which is Shazam backwards. Now, he's technically a good guy, but his power is what I find truly terrifying. Mazaz has the ability to absorb the powers of any superpowered being that he took the life of through his lightning. Using this, he gained all the powers of Bizarro, including invulnerability, self-sustenance, Arctic vision, flame breath, and kryptonite immunity. He got the powers of the Firestorm Matrix from Deathstorm, which are too many to list, the Speed Force abilities from Johnny Quick, and the powers of Hawkwing. While the characters he fought were arguably worse than him, no one from Earth 3 is really good, and he is absolutely terrifying, when he is powered up of course. Number 9. Bump in the Night. For starters, DC's House of Horror is basically a collection of short stories featuring different characters. They are all equally interesting and horror themed. The possession of Billy Batson and Last Laugh stories are particularly interesting, but for today's video, I think I want to talk about the very first one. Bump in the Night. This short story follows Martha Kent on the night Kal-El arrives on Earth. Jonathan Kent has gone out to explore what exactly caused a big bang and a trail of smoke on the Kent's farm, but he isn't coming back. As Martha worries about where her husband has gone to, she goes back inside the house, but Martha starts hearing bumping and thumping coming from upstairs in the house. Suddenly, a demonic humanoid child crashes through the ceiling and begins attacking her. She tries to run to the barn, but fiery beams of energy fire from the creature, blowing up the barn. She takes refuge in her truck only for the creature to land on the hood, shrieking. It throws the truck across the yard and Martha gets out wounded only for the truck to explode. The creature flies away with the symbol of an S emblazoned on his chest. If you are looking for comic book content, this is the place to find it, so hit us with a subscribe to stay inundated with tons of videos about all your favorite heroes. Thank you. Number 8. Speed Demon from the Amalgam Universe. The Amalgam Universe, where the worlds of Marvel and DC collide, is honestly an amazing place. We get all kinds of crazy mashups like Wolverine and Batman, but while that is incredibly awesome, the one I think may be better for this list would be Blaze Allen, the Speed Demon, or basically the Flash mashed together with Ghost Rider. Yes, it's as crazy as it sounds, and honestly, it's more totally awesome than it is scary, but Ghost Rider is already fast with his motorcycle, so imagine if he didn't even need that. The best part of this is that his cousin, Wally West, becomes another version of Speed Demon, and the two of them work together. It's not something that I thought I needed, but I absolutely did need it. Number 7. Witch-marked Wonder Woman. Years ago, a 12-year-old Diana Prince came upon a ritual being performed at a crossroads in Themyscira to the goddess of magic and witches, Hecate, by her followers. Diana gets grabbed by the followers and Hecate brands her with a witch mark, and she vowed to Hippolyta that one day she would return to use her witch mark to take over the world. Once things start popping off in the 2018 Witching Hour crossover, Earth's magic is beginning to disappear and Hecate is obviously to blame. Hecate activates her witch mark, 5 women who have been branded, including Diana. The witch marked power Diana possesses could rip the world apart and tear holes in reality. It's honestly very insane, and it only gets crazier as she gains the power of the other witch marked. Now I glossed over quite a bit for the sake of time, so I suggest you read the story. Number 6. Dawnbreaker. Now this is like a mix of evil Green Lantern and evil Bruce Wayne. Technically, it's just Bruce Wayne, but after the passing of his parents that fateful night, the young Bruce Wayne comes into possession of a Green Lantern ring. We have seen Bruce Wayne wield a Green Lantern ring before, but this is the dark multiverse. Bruce has an unbelievably strong will, and using his powerful will, he is able to override the programming of the Lantern ring, allowing him to use it to take lives. He creates monstrously terrifying green-like constructs and uses them to not just ruthlessly battle criminals, but anyone who stands in his way, including James Gordon, other Green Lanterns, and the Guardians of the Universe. Number 5. Superwoman. While Superwoman is technically an alternate version of Wonder Woman, originally she was actually the Lois Lane from Earth 3, who on this world was seemingly an Amazon as she wielded the lasso of submission instead of truth, which is capable of forcing others to do her bidding and forcing them to love her. But this Superwoman had abilities that were more like a Kryptonian's. She was capable of not only everything Wonder Woman could do, but she could fire beams of red-hot energy from her eyes, and she could fly. She created an incredibly toxic love triangle between Ultraman and Owlman of the Crime Syndicate of America, and even had a child with Owlman, but promised to Ultraman that it was his. This was also while she was having another affair with Alexander Luthor. Damn girl, keep him pretty busy, huh? Yikes. Number 4. Raven from the Last 52 Multiverse. The Batman who laughs comes from the dark multiverse, which is the flip side of the regular multiverse, composed of worlds where nightmares become real. All the worst case scenarios actually came to be on these worlds. During the final battle between the Batman who laughs and Wonder Woman, Laughs summons different heroes turned villains from across the dark multiverse to help him, and among the various characters is a version of the Teen Titans led by a version of Raven who gave in to her father Trigon, who corrupted both her and her Titans into twisted, powerful versions of themselves. Raven herself becomes a red-skinned, armor-clad demon. She actually looks kind of awesome, but she is undeniably evil and ultimately quite terrifying. Number 3. Furnace. Before the Martians became the Martians, they were an incredibly violent and powerful race called the Burning. The Guardians of the Universe experimented on the Burning and put genetic blocks in place to make them afraid of the fire they used as their most powerful weapon. Now fast forward, after the Justice League was trapped and taken down in Obsidian Age Atlantis, John Johns blamed himself for his friend's passing because his fear of fire completely overtook him. He recruits Scorch to help him overcome this fear, and he would use his telepathy to help her deal with her own problems. Unfortunately, in doing this, he also broke the genetic blocks, allowing John to become the incredibly dangerous Furnace, with all his original powers boosted in potential, especially his telepathy, plus an insane level of pyrokinesis. Number 2. Ultraman. In case you haven't figured out the theme of Earth 3, everyone here is just bad from birth. Ultraman was born on the dying Krypton to Jor-Il, who was able to secure a life pod for his incredibly powerful son, who he saw as his best chance of revenge. While in his life pod, Kal-Il was given the ideology of becoming the strongest possible being, eschewing all weakness in himself and in others. His rocket crash landed in Smallville, right through the home of the dysfunctional couple Johnny and Martha Kent, who he forced to be his parents until he was 7 years old, when he took their lives and burned their home to the ground. He took took the name Ultraman, took over the Earth, and created the crime syndicate of America. Now, unlike Superman, Ultraman actually gets more powerful from kryptonite, and the sun is what makes him weaker, which is fine because he will literally just move the moon to block out the sun. And in at number 1 is Vampire Batman. In the Elseworlds Batman and Dracula trilogy, Batman goes up against vampires who have turned Gotham into their home, and then eventually Dracula himself. In the first novel, Red Rain, the hero wipes out the vampires and Dracula, although he is transformed into a vampire himself. Which means we get to see Batman take on crime using the powers of a vampire in the next novel, Bloodstorm. He does his bestest to resist the darker aspects of being a vampire, but that all goes kaput when Batman lashes out and drains the Joker's blood after the Joker de-lifed Catwoman. Batman has Alfred and Gordon stake him, putting Batman into a catatonic state, a state that he is revived from in Crimson Mist, the third novel, when criminals took over Gotham in his absence. But he is almost completely animalistic now thanks to the isolation. A bloodthirsty vampire Batman quickly wipes out most of his enemies in a very bloody form, drinking their blood in the process until he is finally put to rest by Alfred, Gordon, Two-Face, and Killer Croc, who all go with him to the grave.
Number 10. DCAU. In the main animated universe known as the DCAU, the DC Animated Universe, Poison Ivy isn't quite as powerful as her comic book counterpart. She doesn't have the power to manipulate plants, but you know what's cool about her? She doesn't really need that. Here, Pamela actually relies on her smarts to get stuff done typically. She often makes her own poisons, toxins, and serums using plants, using her skills as a genius chemist and botanist to do so. Aside from that, Poison Ivy also is known for having an immunity to all poisons and toxins, even Joker gas. Ivy doesn't just have brains and toxic immunity though. She also has some bronze in this reality. This version of Ivy is also a skilled gymnast and comes armed with a wrist-mounted crossbow, which she occasionally uses. Later on, she also develops pheromones, which she often uses to make men do her bidding. A quite literal femme fatale. And friends, before I move on to this next spot, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, you should go check out our newest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. And when you head on over there, hit subscribe and let them know that Amanda sent you. Number 9. Gotham by Gaslight. Even the old-timey Victorian version of Ivy is pretty cool. Gotham by Gaslight is a series and alternate Earth where Batman actually hunts Jack the Ripper in Gotham City. It is set in the 19th century, turn of the century sort of era. Here, Pamela Isley is also a baddie. She ends up appearing in Convergence Shazam issue number 2 instead of the main Gotham by Gaslight story. Here she is revealed to be one of the rogues of Batman from the Gotham by Gaslight reality. We also learn that she does in fact still have chlorokinesis powers, which I think is pretty neat. It should also be noted that there is in fact a Batman Gotham by Gaslight animated film as well, but for this point we're focusing on the version of the reality from the comics. So not to be confused with the animated film. Number 8. Arrowverse. I'm not sure if we are still calling it that or if we're calling it the CW verse at this point, but you know what I'm talking about here. Poison Ivy is a character who actually appears in the Batwoman series, first being mentioned in episode 13 of the second season, I'll Give You a Clue, and first appearing in the 8th episode of the third season of the series, Trust Destiny. She is portrayed by Bridget Riga in the show, and like her comic book counterpart, has chlorokinesis powers which allow her to command, create, and manipulate plant life. Ivy here, however, does not have pheromone powers, but instead hypnotism powers, which seemingly allow her to control those who lock eyes with her. However, even this power, like Ivy's pheromone powers in the comics, can be thwarted. Number 7. Young Justice. This alternate version of Ivy is definitely a villain, being a member of the Injustice League. She not only has her now typical chlorokinesis powers, but has also worked to create even more monstrous plants, enhancing them with various types of venom, tech, radiation, and magic, including even Joker venom. While Poison Ivy is a force to be reckoned with in this reality, she does ultimately get defeated by Young Justice. But hey, they're the main team of the animated series, and villains are basically designed to lose to heroes, especially if it's a hero-centric story. One of the things I really love about Ivy in the animated series Young Justice is her look. She has green markings on her face and her arms that look like vines almost on her green-hued skin. Number 6. Earth 43. One of the most despicable versions of Poison Poison Ivy. This version hails from the home reality of the Red Rain series, the reality where Batman gets transformed into a vampire. Here, Poison Ivy is a serial killer who uses her powers to seduce men, making them want her desperately before she kills them with a single toxic kiss. Vampire Batman, however, quickly puts an end to Ivy. Here she has chlorokinesis as well, but his very presence causes harm to her plants, killing them. Despite her abilities, he defeats her easily enough by biting into her neck and decapitating her afterwards, to make sure that she doesn't turn into a vampire. This version of Ivy both first appears and dies in Batman Crimson Mist. Number 5. Arkham Game. In the Arkham video game universe, Ivy becomes a somewhat redeemed figure. Initially, she is a villain, one of the criminals locked up in Arkham Asylum who ends up breaking free. But although she seems to identify more with nature than humanity, she still ends up helping to save Gotham in the end, even though she recently plotted the city's demise herself. Poison Ivy here is toxic to most people thanks to some accidental mad science, which caused her to turn into a plant-human hybrid. Instead of blood pumping through her veins, Ivy has chlorophyll. She also has pheromone powers, which here make her a master of seduction. Poison Ivy teams up with Batman in the end in this reality to help him defeat Scarecrow's fear toxin, even sacrificing herself to Number 4. New Earth. Similar to her animated counterpart, Poison Ivy in the previous continuity of New Earth was not as powerful as the current version of her that we have in the comics. At least, not initially. Originally, her abilities were more based in the realm of science and her knowledge, but following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths, she gained more superpower-based abilities. Her chlorokinesis in the New Earth continuity seems to be somewhat mystical in origin post-Crisis, actually being tied to the green, which is the same force that grants the powerhouse of Swamp Thing his powers. She also ends up developing pheromone control that allows her to seduce not just men, but people of all genders. She can control her green-hued skin, reducing its pigmentation, allowing her to move through a crowd unnoticed, and she can absorb the toxins of animals and plants to make her touch more deadly. Number 3. Lady of the Forest. It's possible that this version of Ivy is even more powerful than she seems in the comics. She hails from the reality belonging to the Dark Knights of Steel series, which sets up the DC universe in a more medieval and fantasy-based setting. Here, Ivy is known as the Lady of the Forest, protecting Hob Forest out of love for the court jester Harley Quinn. While her power is really shown to only have reach in the forest in the series, it is more magic based in this reality, and it could potentially reach further than that. It could be just Ivy doesn't want to reach further than that. She helps the House of L, but she doesn't actually do it out of love for them, but only out of love for Harley. Number 2. Harley Quinn Animated Series. One of the most powerful versions of Ivy when it comes down to it is from the Harley Quinn Animated Series. While a humorous and comical show filled with zany antics and tons of jokes, Ivy's power is not to be laughed at here. In fact, it seems as though a few different versions of the character were combined together to give us this powerhouse version that ends up becoming Harley Quinn's best friend and later her girlfriend. Here, Ivy has powers of chlorokinesis and pheromone control. Although her pheromone powers actually also cause her victims to transform into trees and eventually die. Which could be a plus, could be a minus, depending on how you see that. Much darker than the comics for sure. Poison Ivy here can also heal from pretty much anything, even seemingly coming back from the dead, so long as she's buried in fresh soil, which seems to allow her to regenerate, which is pretty cool. Number 1. Prime Earth. Technically, this version of Poison Ivy isn't a variant because she's the main continuity version from the comics, who we now consider to be the prime version, but she's really powerful, and I'd be remiss if I did not mention her on this list. So we're gonna talk about her. She's making my cut anyway. You're just gonna have to deal with it because she's too good for me to not talk about her. The current main continuity version of Poison Ivy is similar to her New Earth counterpart, but her power levels are on a different scale. She was never able to stick to walls, sadly though. Yeah, that was the thing that New Earth Ivy could do pre-Crisis, which was pretty weird, but also kinda interesting. This version of Ivy was powerful enough to at one point use her abilities to control all of the people of the world through the greens that they ate. What's even more crazy is she was actually talked out of ruling the world, as that was really the only way to defeat her at that point. That's how powerful she was. She had such immense control over supremely powerful beings as well, like Superman. This version of Ivy can also connect to other plants through the green, allowing her to perceive many different places around the world through the shared consciousness of plant life. And because she is connected to the green, she can never really die either, like her Harley Quinn animated series counterpart. kind of like Swamp Thing as well. She can kind of always come back because she kind of exists in plant life, you know what I mean? So I've started collecting the new Poison Ivy series, by the way, and I'm super excited to finally start reading it soon. I have such a backlog of comics to read right now. Ivy deserves more love in the comics, that is for sure. And did you know that that's her first solo book? That's crazy to me. Like, it's 2022, what are we doing here? Till next time, thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay nerdy, YouTube.